You mentioned punching above your weight. I have to touch on the element you said earlier, being kind of incumbent responses. Incumbents respond in varying ways. I hear there's an interesting story here. How did incumbents respond to you when things started to hum? And take me to that story. I'm intrigued. I don't know the answer here. I don't know this, so tell me more.
Yeah. So I'll try to keep this as understandable and non-wonky as possible, but apologies if I get in the weeds a little bit here. So I think the place we were woefully naive at PillPack when we founded the company was this, right? We didn't really understand why there weren't more e-commerce pharmacies. Like every other category, there's all these big winners. In pharmacy, there was no e-commerce player before PillPack. Like they didn't exist, right? There's CVS and Walgreens, there's PBM-owned mail-order pharmacies. There's no e-commerce business. Well, that's weird. Like we should just build this. This will be great. We're gonna build a great customer experience, and it's gonna be awesome. And there are the things called PBMs, which stand for Pharmacy Benefit Managers, and they are companies like Express Scripts, CVS Caremark, OptumRx, and they're kind of the equivalent of insurance companies, but only for your prescription drugs. And historically, they were in two different businesses. One was managing your benefits. So how much is your copay? Which pharmacies can you use? How much is your out-of-pocket? Which medications are covered? Like all the things an insurance company does. And then the other half of their business was owning and operating mail-order pharmacies. So they did home delivery for consumers. And so obviously, they weren't particularly thrilled about other companies competing with them in that second category, right? They had a captive market on doing home delivery in pharmacy. And this is the single reason.
Aren't you fucked? Because like, if they're the ones who are saying, hey, we'll own the transaction mechanism, we're the insurers of these prescriptions, and we're not going to give PillPack license, aren't you fucked?
Yes, you are fucked. This is why I say you would have never started this company if you knew how the industry dynamics work. It's why no healthcare investor would have invested in this company. Like, this is idiotic. Like, there's no way these guys are going to let you in their network. Like,
But I'm a tech investor, and respectfully, that's like the most cool thing. The core supply side can't engage because it cannibalizes their own business.
I was horribly confident that this would be a non-issue. Like, I've run pharmacies before. Just how you fill out the paperwork, you get a network with the insurance companies. Like, it's fine. And like, that's actually what we did. Like, we started a pharmacy and we got a network with all the insurance companies, and it was totally fine, right? So like 2013, 14, first half of 2015, like, we were in network as a small little independent pharmacy, like any other independent pharmacy, and they didn't care, right? Like, why would they care? We're doing like very small amounts of volume. They didn't even know who we were, frankly. We filled out like very administrative paperwork to get in network. And then
what changed?
We got our Facebook ads turned on and the company started scaling and started growing really quickly. And of course, they see every transaction that you process because they are the transaction processor. And then things change quickly, right? Like, we get to the middle of 2015, we went from, I don't know, $10 million run rate to like a $70 million run rate in like 6 months, 9 months, something like that. And then they started really caring, right? And so now, like, everyone knows who PillPack is. And we got very lucky. We got this guy, Jim Messina, who was Obama's deputy chief of staff, joined our board. And he joined our board explicitly to help us navigate regulatory and incumbent issues like this, and he's very good at this. And through 2015, we got termination notices from all of the major PBMs, right? Very obviously. And I would say every one of them but Express Scripts, we worked through in a very kind of private, professional way with them. And net, we maintained access, we maintained coverage, mostly because we were already serving their customers, and their customers liked the product, and it would have been very painful for them to take it away, was the sort of base of that. But then early 20s...
Could you not have been more aggressive and just taken vertical ownership and done the payment processing yourself too, and then actually really remove some...
It's not just payment processing.
Why?
It's like they're the equivalent of, like, you can think about like a PBM, or honestly kind of a payer in general, as like the demand aggregator in healthcare, right? Like, they own that demand. They own the employer relationships. They had the Medicare relationships. Like, you would have had it, as a startup, you could not have built what they had built unless you're building an entirely different company. You can't do it when we're building the equivalent of a retailer, like literally impossible. And so it's early 2016, Express Scripts sent us a termination notice. Honestly, it looks the same as all the other termination notices we had received and we had managed quietly and figured out. And we reached out to them the same way we did with the others and tried to get a meeting and try to help figure it out. And we had 2 weeks, right? So termination notice states like, in 2 weeks, you can no longer serve Express Scripts customers. Like you can't process transactions. For context, they're the largest PBM. So this was like 40% of our revenue. And as far as we knew, in 2 weeks, like that revenue goes to zero. And so after we spent a week just trying to get in touch with somebody, and they were just radio silent, like would not even engage with us. And so we made the pretty aggressive decision to start a public war. And so Colin Rainey, who had started like 3 days before, I think he was on a cross-country flight, designed like a full explainer video that had talked about what a PBM is, what they do, why this matters. And then we filmed a customer testimonial of one of our customers, and I think within 2 days had 1,400 or 1,500 like customer testimonials. And these weren't like, oh, like it'd be so sad to lose PillPack. Like I love the packaging. It was like, if we lose PillPack, like I'm gonna have to put my mom into a home, and like we don't really know actually what we're gonna do. And it was 1,500 of these, right? And so we built a whole website, fixpharmacy.com, had all the customer testimonials on it, had the explainer video, the customer video, and then we had all this like wonky stuff for regulators if they wanted to like drill into what was going on. And then we just did a massive PR blitz. So we launched the site. I think we had 40 articles in like 2 hours. And we leaned super heavy on like, this actually is going to be really bad for these customers. Like this isn't like a David and Goliath, like hopefully one of the businesses wins and one loses. Like this is going to be super bad for the customers that are using this service. And then we ran a regulatory process and tried to do what we could do. And I think within 24 hours, Express Scripts was at the table. And then it gets even crazier. So we're now like, I don't know, it's like 5 days later, and we've got 2 days to get this contract fixed. And like now it is a business negotiation. We're trying to find a path forward with Express Scripts. I don't think anyone's heard this story ever. But Elliot and I are sitting in a conference room with Colin, who again is pretty new to the space. I'm sitting on my laptop. We're like the war room, right? We've got all the site design on the walls. It's just like a classic war room. And I get an email from like the equivalent of our GPO for like all of the other PBMs. Like you kind of have a GPO-y type thing that sits between you. And they're like, hey, like we saw this Express Scripts stuff. Like this seems bad. Like actually, like we're going to kick you out too. And so we were 48 hours from going from like, I don't know what it was, 100 million in revenue to zero. Like zero. We have to now I have to go figure out how to like fix the Express Scripts thing. And Elliot, and we got to go figure out how to like fix all of the other contracts like at the exact same time. And so I'm sitting there, I get the email, like I don't say anything. I just like turn the computer around to Elliot, who looks at it and is just like, we say nothing for probably like 3 minutes. And Colin's sitting like, hey guys, like what's going on? The two of us walk out and I'm like, Elliot, like you got to figure out this GPO thing. Like, I don't know how we're going to deal with that, but you got to figure it out. And I was like, I'll figure out Express Scripts and like, we'll figure it out. And by Friday night, which was that was the end for both, Elliot had found a new GPO, done all the tech work and administrative work to flip into it. And I had signed a new contract with Express Scripts. And we had not lost a single contract, and we had solidified ourselves like publicly as a company that was going to exist in the space like in perpetuity. So it was definitely it was as live or die as you're ever going to see. And yeah, it was that sort of make it moment for the business.
Are you panicking at that point? That is a holy shit moment. How do you keep your cool, like TJ?
I have a personality that when things get really intense, like I get calm. The opposite doesn't tend to happen. So it was incredibly stressful, but like I also felt like I was kind of in my element, and like there was like an enjoyment, and like this is like kind of like it's a battle, and we're gonna figure it out, and we're playing a chess match here, and certainly was stressed. I certainly was not sleeping well, but at the same time, like there was like an enjoyment to it, and when we pulled it off, like it solidified the business in a way that we couldn't have done in any other way. And similarly, like this is one of those decisions that like I think if you were a little too anxious and you want to make the decision, like you would have wanted to get ahead of this one. Like you would have wanted to like, we should go do some BD deal with them. Like, let's figure this out. And I was like, nope, none of that felt right. Like it's not going to work. Like, let's just play this out and see how it plays out. And I don't think there was any other path to pulling this off than the one we took. But you could have also never like architected this path. It was just building something great for customers, and when it mattered, those customers came and kind of defended the access that they had.
TJ, why on earth did they relent? What made them pull back?
I mean, I think it was there was no excuse from a customer standpoint, right? Like it was all infighting between businesses. And honestly, like I should caveat this all now that PillPack and Amazon Pharmacy are like real players. Like we actually have, when I left PillPack in September, we had a great relationship with Express Scripts. We launched the Prime discount program with them. And we flipped from like this little nit that they could just squash to like a partner. And so like these things sort of they run their course. But net, like those relationships now are sound and good. And we can now kind of build stuff that ends up being good for customers.